I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is a special edition of Currents. It was the day when everything changed.
Now, 8 years later, the memories.
They should never be forgotten. We will never forget that day or them.
The memorials.
And the meaning of 9/11.
They can take away our loved ones or whatever, but they can't take away the memories that we have in our hearts.
Well, good evening. Everyone can remember where they were 8 years ago today.
And so tonight, that is the subject of this special edition of Currents, remembering. How do you live with a memory that so many would rather forget? Well, many people here in Brooklyn are choosing to remember the events of 9/11 and remember the loved ones that they lost that day with reverence and also with hope.
And two poignant reminders can be found at a pair of Brooklyn churches I visited this week. Parishes where the scars of 9/11 are especially deep.
Construction at the World Trade Center site has hit several snags during the last 8 years. Infighting among developers, money issues, and other problems have all led to delays, leaving many people to wonder whether the memorial will be finished in time for the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks or not. With all of the uncertainty at ground zero, at least two Brooklyn parishes have memorials that have been up for years.
It was the families who had lost someone in the attack on 9/11, and it really started with just that basic desire, let's do something. 2 years later, in September 11th of 2004, the finished product.
At St. Ephraim's Church in Bay Ridge, 9 parishioners were lost on 9/11. Most of them worked in the Twin Towers.
Some of them we knew well. We knew Maria Lavash well. We knew Dennis Oberg was a young firefighter. Some of the others were very young families. Almost all the families were involved in some way or other in forming this garden. Originally, it was Christ standing, bending down to pick up the lost sheep. And that's where the towers came about, that would it be possible for Christ to hold the Twin Towers with that large piece of earth underneath, welcoming all those who are lost.
In front of the statue is a small piece of rusty steel.
A police officer who was very, very involved brought that to us. He was a deputy inspector. And I remember the day he came into the rectory, he had this in a box. And when he walked in, there was an absolute silence in the office because we knew what was there. It's quite heavy. It looks small, but it's quite heavy. We passed it from one person to the other. But it was like we were holding something so sacred.
At the neighboring Church of Our Lady of Angels, there's another piece of steel from the towers. This one is a large section of some beams from one of the towers, and it serves as the centerpiece of this church's 9/11 memorial.
Father, tell me, first of all, how this particular memorial came about here at the church.
There were about 18 or 19 families that Our Lady of Angels was involved with at 9/11. And because it was such a tremendous impact on the community and the spirit of the community responding to those families in their hour of bereavement, we really kind of felt that something should be done that would be a little different. We did a little investigation, and we found through some friends of mine where the steel was going.
And these 3 brothers were instrumental in getting the parish memorial installed.
It's very difficult to get the steel released because everything was considered part of the crime scene. It all had to get, checked for whatever was remnants of anybody. I mean, there's still people missing.
Does this really give people maybe some help in some closure or something like that, whereas they don't have a place to maybe go mourn their loved ones so much?
A very good insight on your part, because What I would see a lot of times just walking by is there would be a constant stream of people who would be sitting here and reflecting, and even people saying their prayers just as an opportunity to a quiet spot. By putting the people's names up and by having this memorial, we hope that what happened is it kind of forever kept in people's hearts all of those people who died so tragically that day.
Places of remembrance at the parishes of St. Ephraim's and Our Lady of Angels. Throughout this show, we'll be visiting some other places of remembrance around the city. And when we come back, we'll pay a visit to what will be the biggest and most dramatic of all. We'll have a first-hand look at the new World Trade Center Preview Center in Lower Manhattan.
We do have all of that and the day's headlines also coming up next. So stay with us. There's much more ahead on this special edition of Currents as we remember 9/11.
September 11th, 2001 was a hectic but a horrible day here at the Tablet. It was our press day, the day we send the newspaper to the printers. From our office windows here, we could actually see the World Trade Center. It looked like a Roman candle lit up with flames flying out of the top and papers flying all out over New York Harbor. We had to remake the entire paper. We sent our reporters out to the local Catholic schools. We called the diocesan offices to find out what was going on in the diocese. Wrote the paper in one day. It was a day we just would not want to relive here at the Tablet.
Welcome back to this special edition of Currents as we remember 9/11. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. One of the many groups of people that were directly impacted by the events of that fateful day were the first responders, the firefighters, the emergency service workers, police officers.
That's right. And for those officers, the September 11th attacks continue to reverberate. Earlier on in the week, we visited Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish in Dyker Heights for a special mass, and afterwards we had a chance to speak with a couple of police chaplains.
Of 9/11 for the police families is very important, but I think it's also very important even for the life of our parish. 9/11 isn't something that happened to somebody else. It's something that happened to each and every one of us.
The sense of community is very deep of the people that have suffered, and they have bonded with each other in a very unique way.
We never forget our home. We really do. Whether we're active, whether we're retired, family members of deceased officers. We're all here for the long haul together.
It was during 9/11, immediately after, I celebrated Mass along with the other chaplains every single day. It started off with about maybe 10 police officers, and by the end, the last day that we had it, we closed off Greenwich Street and Murray Street in the middle of Lower Manhattan, and the place was filled with people, and I celebrated Mass right in the middle of the street. Because of those Masses, we continue the tradition that we celebrate every year, the memorials on the anniversary of 9/11.
Memorial Mass every year are very good for people. You can just see by the gathering here how people need to share, need to talk, need to remember, need to be with each other in that recollection of 9/11.
To join together and share the horrors of that day, the sadness of that day, and we put ourselves in a situation to be there to comfort not only ourselves, but to those who have lost loved ones.
A memorial mass at Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish.
Well, again and again, we have been reminded of the spirit of New Yorkers and the determination to move forward while never forgetting the loved ones who lost their lives 8 years ago.
Absolutely. And to that end, a memorial site and museum have been in the planning stages for some time. Estimates vary as to when those memorials will actually be completed, but a preview site has been set up near Ground Zero. Here's a look.
The purpose of the 9/11 Memorial Preview Site is to give the hundreds of thousands of visitors who are currently coming down to the World Trade Center a chance to see the renderings, the plans, and get a sense of the progress that's being made on the memorial and museum. And also we hope that they'll have a chance to participate in the creation of the museum by sharing their 9/11 story. We have some real-time construction images that people can take a look at, and they can see that there's actually a real sense of momentum and that we're on track to open the memorial in time for the 10th anniversary of the attacks. You know, in the worst of times, we have a capacity to show our best side and to be there for each other in a way that's really special and important, particularly in a time of crisis. The museum will capture those stories and remind people of our capacity for compassion. Already there's a generation of children growing up who have no firsthand knowledge of the attacks. We hope that it'll serve as a reminder and also, you know, encourage people to want to get involved.
Well, a preview there of what's to come at Ground Zero. And Ground Zero is where mourners gathered today to remember those who were killed on 9/11. Volunteers and family members read aloud the names of those who died in the Twin Towers. During the ceremony, Mayor Michael Bloomberg said the city should safeguard the memories of those who died by rekindling the spirit of service that gave the city hope and kept us strong. In Washington, President Obama observed a moment of silence at the White House this morning at 8:46. That's the time the first plane hit the World Trade Center. The president later placed a wreath at the Pentagon in memory of the victims of the attacks. And in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, bells tolled 40 times to remember the victims killed when United Airlines Flight 93 crashed there 8 years ago today.
Well, stay tuned. This special edition of Currents Remembering 9/11 continues.
On that very sad and fateful morning, I was in the home of a parishioner and glimpsed on her television the horror of what happened. People who were running, crying, looking for assistance. I was numb, and the only thought that came to mind was asking for God's mercy on the victims. And in the end, it's the mercy of God that comes to us in Jesus that is the remedy for all such evil.
Welcome back. For a lot of people, September 11th brings a mixture of emotions, anger, sorrow, and grief among them.
But there is help. Earlier this week, I spoke with Ingrid Sunarine. She's the Director of Bereavement Services for the Brooklyn Diocese. Ingrid, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We are looking at the 8th anniversary of 9/11. First, let's go back. Obviously, there are a lot of people that are still dealing with this tragedy. What exactly was the diocesan response from, Brooklyn, from New York, in response to 9/11?
We had a lot of work to do. We were all over the place. My job was strictly to take care of the employees. So we had a wonderful memorial where we did the rituals of lighting the candles, and everyone, all, I don't know, 200 or more of them came up and lit the candles. It was beautiful. We also had the trauma response team, and they were going around to the different parishes and the different, and doing different things for 9/11. It was something that we had never experienced before, so we were just about all over the place trying to be there for everyone in the community as well as for, our own employees as well.
Sure. And what are the ways in which you reach out now to survivors and families and
Well, those who still need, work with PTSD and stuff, we have social workers and everybody. Charities has over 200 and something different programs. I strictly do bereavement, so sure. I can talk about the bereavement more.
Right. And talking about the bereavement, there's obviously a range of emotions that anyone can feel after having experienced that day. What are some of the things that they can do in order to heal and in order to very much keep the people that they love in their hearts and alive in their present day life?
Well, you know, when 9/11 happened, we have to look at it this way. Their grief at that time was really like an onion. There were so many layers. They were not really able to address the grief right away. They had other things to deal with. After a while, they started to come to us because at first we didn't have anyone from 9/11 coming to our programs, and we couldn't understand why. But they were dealing with other aspects of their loss. Then finally they started coming to us, and you know, the sadness, the intense pain, it was a lot to deal with. So we pretty much just try to help them cope with it by, again, doing things like rituals, journaling, and music, listening to music, all different things that can help them.
A lot of times when people have a tragedy in their life, they feel as though their faith, their very core of what they so had believed in and trusted for so long is no longer there. What do you say to someone whose faith has been shaken by tragedy?
See, this is exactly what happens. Spirituality challenges our faith when we have a loss. And we tried to say, well, where was God in all of this? We need to know, of course, that He was always there for us. He's the one who was helping us all along, even though at that time we were very angry with Him. But God can take it. He works with us, He lives with us, He knows exactly how we feel. And He's actually cradling us in a time like that. So us being angry with Him, He's accustomed to that. You know.
So how do we then use that tragedy to perhaps build or connect more deeply with our faith and work through it and integrate that loss into our life in a faithful way?
You know, sometimes however you dealt with your faith before a tragedy is how you're going to do it after. Some people they go to church every day, they're very in tune with the Lord. Then there are some people who have not, and because of this, they might either turn away from it totally or go towards it. So everyone is different in dealing with this. However, when they decide that this is the route that I want to take, there are so many reflections out there. The Lamentations, beautiful to work with when you're dealing with your grief.
So it's a way you can use your personal prayer and meditation to reflect.
To reflect,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you think people are afraid of feeling sad and afraid of feeling in touch with these emotions, that they feel like they must be compelled to move on? And if so, is that perhaps not the right thing?
I don't think they're afraid. I think that people need to give them permission to do so, to have these feelings. And that's one of the reasons we have these groups. When they come to our environment, they're able to be themselves. And this is a safe place, as we say, that they can come and talk about their loss, and nobody in the group will say, oh, get over it or move on.
And so if you were to encounter someone that had suffered a loss, the right approach or the right thing to say to them would be, or to do for them would be?
Again, we can't tell people how to grieve. There is no right way or wrong way to grieve. However, we just have to be there for them and affirm whatever feelings they're feeling.
And do you think it's typical that after 8 years there is still so much pain, or that there is still so much wrestling with some of the emotions around things, or is it just part of dealing with life and loss and trying to integrate loss into our daily lives?
Well, you know, loss is a journey. When you're grieving, it's a journey, and it's a lifelong journey. That's the thing about it. So it's not something that just goes away. You can incorporate it in your life. You know, like for instance, the holidays are coming. If you can donate things in the person's name, like for instance, the flowers, the poinsettias in church, that's beautiful, you do that.
Sure.
Or you can, in the summer, many people have even planted flowers, you know, have a rose garden or something like that. Things that help you to really, you know,
keep their memory alive,
because that's what you have to do. That's all you have. You know, they can take away our loved ones or whatever, but they can't take away the memories that we have in our hearts.
Well said. Well, Ingrid, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to speak with you
My
today.
pleasure.
And very nice that you have so many programs available for everyone who may need them.
Thank you so much.
That is Ingrid Soonarine, the Director of Bereavement Services for the Brooklyn Diocese. And I've also posted some information on our blog for those interested in learning more about those services. Just head over to our website, that's netny.net/currents, and click on Riding the Wave.
All right, and stay tuned. This very special edition of Currents, Remembering 9/11, continues.
My most vivid memory is really at the end of the day and the day after. I had been working at CBS News, and I had spent all of 9/11 in the newsroom. We finally went off the air at 2 in the morning. We were sent home, but there was nowhere to go. A group of us got together and walked over to the hotel. It was eerie how quiet it was because there was no one on the streets. Early the next morning, as I was checking out, a fireman was checking in, and he was just completely covered in ash from head to foot. He looked like a ghost. When I think of 9/11, I think of that man and what I saw, and it still haunts me.
Finally tonight, we've seen the sights and sounds of September 11, 2001. We've also traveled around the city where people are remembering that day and their loved ones lost.
And our cameras were at Coney Island last night for one of the most touching and heartfelt remembrances.
I'm here at the wall because my son is on the wall. He was a fireman with Engine Company 55 in Lower Manhattan on the day of 9/11. And we come here every year because this is the most beautiful memorial we have been to. To see their faces on this wall, it puts the face with the name, and we know that they'll never be forgotten.
Tonight we're here, it's a vigil that we're a little prayer service to remember our fallen brothers who gave their lives on 9/11. The Coney Island Wall was started by a Brooklyn businessman named Sal Moglen, who was born in Brooklyn and everything.
It was an idea that I had after September 11th, feeling that out of 343 firemen that were killed that morning, Brooklyn lost 137, and I felt that we need to do something for the firefighters that went over the bridge and never came home.
This is an event we have for the last several years. It's been going on for the families to come here before 9/11. A lot of them stay home at 9/11 and do what they have to do. They're committed to other, but this is a place where everyone can meet. It's the wall. They can see their loved ones that were passed.
We come here every year rather than going down to the World Trade Center where it's much more regimented and controlled. It's just nice to come here and spend time with other family members and other friends, and it's just a nice, calm, quiet way to remember.
It just makes you feel good to see them. They should never be forgotten.
Good is the Lord who waits for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good to hope in silence for the saving help of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans.
Well, one thing I would love to see with the wall is people to know that it's down here. We don't charge admission. It's here to celebrate their lives, to let people know that there's a place to come to.
They don't have to go to Washington. They don't have to go to memorials outside of our city. The nicest memorial in America is right here in Brooklyn.
To have the wall here is a call to the people to remember the good times they had with their families. When they finally finish that memorial downtown, that's going to speak of death. This monument always speaks of life.
The Brooklyn Wall of Remembrance for the firefighters from this borough who lost their lives on September 11th. Now, if you're interested in actually seeing it for yourself, it's at Keyspan Park in Coney Island.
Really, really nice. Very intimate. Well done.
Very, very much so.
Where were you on 9/11?
I was actually in college. I was in school, and I was actually taking a music class that morning. And we really didn't know anything about it, and we got out of the class and went back to one of the main buildings of the school and heard that a plane had hit one of the towers. And then from that point forward, I think the rest of the day, I also was working part-time at a radio station while in college. From that point forward, aside from the time that my my commute from school to work, I was just glued to the TV, and you know, it was something that really hit home. Even there, I went to college, of course, in Georgia, and it was something that really hit home for me. What about yourself?
I was working as a journalist, as a reporter for NBC at the time in Connecticut near here, and one of the things that I did was interview a survivor. His name, I'll never forget it, Jimmy Viscenza, and he chronicled how he was literally able to escape and make it home, and his wife Frances was so happy to see him, and I interviewed her as well and his family, and I think it was the first time that really your emotions were just really on screen, as visible as they were, because he was so powerful and his story was so powerful.
Everything changed that day.
Sure did.
Never been the same. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Currents Remembering 9/11. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Have a good weekend.